clearly consolidation is good for the companies that are doing that, but question mark, is that good for the clients that they serve?
Everyone should be using AI, because here's the reality. Your staff is using AI today. So in strength, you could do a progressive program. Same with cardio. You could, if you have a marathon or a 5K coming up, you could build a training program towards that. There is no programming for recovery. The strength training equipment sales industry is projected to hit $19 billion by the end of this decade, and it's going to be larger than the global luxury watch market.
Welcome to this week's episode of Lifts. Normally we do this behind the camera without a big group of people, so there's a little bit more nerves in this particular one than normal. And so being on the stage today is quite a privilege, and I really appreciate being invited here. But I also wanted to say to sort of Mo, my partner, is I'm certainly no guru. Our plan is not to come up here and sort of give specific instructions about what I personally think is right for the industry to do going forward. But I've always been a curious person, and in my time in the industry has been about 25, 26 years, and I've always been curious to sort of understand what's happening. I've always been curious to understand where things are going. And so, although Mo, I would class as much more of an expert in a particular field than myself, I think the idea of this session is to really challenge some of the things that we typically do. I'm going to many industry events, like probably many of you, is you tend to get a similar amount of people, tend to get sort of similar conversations, and you end up getting similar conclusions. And what I hope that Mo and I do with Lifts, and what I hope we can achieve today, is maybe ask some different questions in order to maybe get some different results. And maybe, if we take one thing from this session, maybe there's a new idea that we hadn't have thought about, which may take us into a new direction. So, Mo, I'd like to sort of get your thoughts on how we're going to handle the conversation today.
Well, it's definitely unique and different. I typically do this from home with my podcast setup, but now we are here with a live audience. We're going to try to call on a couple of you during the podcast here. Yeah, like you, I think I am grateful to be invited and to have this special edition of Lifts to be live. This is a gorgeous location. I've never been out to Westlake or the Four Seasons, and I want to thank W3 for having us here. This conference does feel definitely more unique. It's my first W3 conference. I typically have different roles, but I feel like they've really brought together fitness and wellness and technology, and just all tied into an incredible venue and experience. So I feel like we're almost like recording some sort of documentary, not a podcast. And look, I know this is different for us to do live. One of the biggest differences, I think, with live versus not is we can't pause.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can't pause out.
And we can't edit. So this is going straight to tape, but this has been an awesome event. I've had some really great conversations. In fact, this morning, I went on what was going to be a 7-mile trail run with Brandon from Gantner. I think we cut it down to 5. And it was beautiful. It was a little bit painful, but I'm glad that I did it. So I think that's what this is about. It's about doing the hard things, having the tough conversations, and really laying the groundwork for what the next 12 months and 2 years and 5 years will look like.
So maybe we just start with our journey up. Like yesterday, I managed to bump into Greg, and he was traveling to the event, and we went and checked out a couple of gyms on our way over. We saw Gold's Gym Fullerton, and then we went down into Santa Monica, and we saw what was described as an AI gym, which was Fred Fitness. So maybe that's a good place to start. Maybe sort of share your thoughts and experiences of Fred Fitness.
Yeah, we've been talking about Fred Fitness for about a year, I think. And I know Philip from eGym has been mentioning it to us. And so Fred Fitness, just some background, their parent company owns a big chain of gyms in Germany called CleverFit. And they open up this AI-first gym here. And the idea behind it is, can you use electronic controls, AI recommendations to kind of build a smart gym environment? So when you come in, instead of doing a traditional assessment with a personal trainer, you've got a wellness kind of hub that walks you through it. I think it was interesting. One of my key things is, I'm sure the initial vision was to have it be all machines, but when we had the tour, they added other equipment. We saw a cable machine, we saw some dumbbells, and I think when you're thinking about the mix of a gym, it's really hard to just say a gym layout can only have electronic motorized base controls. While that might be the intention, it might sound really good. I think consumers really crave optionality. So that was one of my biggest takeaways from looking at that is they had this initial vision, but then they had to kind of layer in stuff because they found out that members want more.
The other thing I recommend, if you haven't seen it, to check it out if you're in the area. But it wasn't what you would, I guess, imagine as a traditional gym. Like, you didn't have a lot of people sweating and running around. It was almost like a retail showroom to some extent, which I think lent itself to the type of equipment that was in there.
I would say that people look pretty.
They did, yeah, they did, and it was beautifully done. But it was very much like you would kind of walk into a beautiful sort of boutique clothing store and try some equipment on. But I liked it, and I could definitely imagine myself maybe working out in that type of environment. But it certainly, I guess, reimagined like where gyms could go, and it was a combination, maybe like a boutique studio with a traditional fitness gym, which I think is a slightly different space to what we've seen before.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I wish them the best. They're opening up a second location, I think, in Culver City, which might be a better location for what they're trying to do.
Well, look, what we'll do is we'll jump into the questions. We asked the buyers and suppliers here at W3Fit to share their thoughts ahead of time. And what you'll see is some of the biggest opportunities that are trending in the recovery space, training modalities, and then also in software, which is an area where we'll probably start. And so the responses were quite interesting, and they're going to really sort of shape the discussion over the next sort of 20, 25 minutes. And we'll start with software and mergers and acquisitions. And it's an area for me, I didn't really, I'm very much from the equipment side. I'm not particularly tech first. I'm sort of, coming up to be my mid-50s, so I think I must have missed out on this technology space. But it's an area that I've learned more about as I've got to know Mo, and really probably understood the importance of having the right partners in this area, as it relates to business today, but also with a number of the changes that are happening around things like AI, how important it is to really understand like where that's going and how critical that is in terms of the success of anybody's business. And so there's a couple of changes that have happened in the industry very recently, which Mo, I think, will be good to talk about, which is some of the recent consolidation by I believe Club Essential and Easy Pay that have been sold to Explore. So maybe as a starting point, Mo, you could provide a little bit of an overview of that acquisition and really what you think it means for the industry, both on the positives, but also some of the maybe not so positive things that would be important to sort of share with people with businesses here today.
Yeah, obviously this is a topic that I deal with on a daily basis. With my role at ABC Fitness and also managing Sweatworks, one, consolidation is accelerating. So we obviously see that. And you have big private equity players behind it, and they've just changed the game, and the players are getting even larger. So here are a few anchors for you to consider. Explore, now the combined company with Explore and Club Essentials, are majorly backed by a private equity firm called Advent International. So Battery Ventures and Silver Lake, that were primarily before backing Club Essentials, are going to remain on as minority investors. So translation here, long horizon on capital, and a serious bet on the vertical SaaS platform plus embedded payments, because remember, Explore has embedded payments. Now you look at ABC. ABC has Thoma Bravo. It is a Thoma Bravo portfolio company. They acquired ABC in 2018, and they're following the classic TB playbook, and I'm fortunate to be a part of that, which is scale the company, modernize the product, integrate payments, and create some really good processes in-house. And there's been some chatter about what's next for ABC, which I'll touch on here in a minute. Then you've got another big player with Playlist, which was formerly called MindBody Plus ClassPass, backed by Vista. Vista took MindBody private in 2019, and then backed the acquisition of ClassPass in 2021, and the former ClassPass leadership team is now running the whole Playlist company. They also got an additional $500 million in 2021 from Sixth Street as well. So what they've kind of combined there is solving for how you discover and also how you could book. Now, if you're zooming out, right, take a big step back, and let's go higher up. M&A in tech totaled $5 billion last year, in fitness tech specifically. Deal volume in the last year has been up 42%, which is significant. PE right now, the PE firms that are backing fitness companies are sitting on 1.2 trillion of dry powder, which means that they've got 1.2 trillion to invest. For comparison, that's bigger than the GDP of Mexico, right? That is how much we're talking about here. So the capital is here to consolidate what has been an incredibly fragmented, payments-rich SaaS vertical. So there clearly is a massive opportunity here. But here's the tension. I think when you look at a lot of these acquisitions, and you're looking at, for example, Explore plus CE, are they making an ecosystem stronger? What does this allow? Are they able to integrate? Because acquiring a company in some ways is the first step. The harder part, as most people who've been through it will tell you, is integration. And then are fewer choices better for the market, right? Because sometimes you could say more choices, more innovation. So I want to come back to that. But we've seen this before. About 10 years ago, we saw the same playbook from PE firms applied to healthcare. And in that, 3 players today in healthcare control 70% of EHR systems in the market. And we've seen that happen with success. And I think we're going to be following the same playbook. So with fitness software, what you hope for is that consolidation will allow more innovation. And that's critical in a time of AI, where you have to be thinking AI first about everything. Interoperability, so when you're migrating from one system to the other, why is it so difficult to do? Like, it's almost like an art. We make it really hard to do that. So the third, personalization. As you think about, it's not just about a gym check-in anymore. It's not just about what's happening within your 4 walls. It's how is your member sleeping? What you remember eating? What other activities are they doing? And I was at the Government Health Summit last week in New York, and that was a big topic of conversation. So I think that, you've got to decide from an operator perspective, when you're making a choice on a vendor, what is your philosophy? And a lot of times it comes down to economics. A lot of times operators will tend to say, well, I'm going to go with this vendor because from an economics perspective, whether it's the rebates or the transaction fees or something else, is what's leading it. But what I would say is you probably want to go a little bit deeper. You want to understand who is the PE firm that is backing you. What is their playbook? Every PE firm out there, like Advent, Vista, Thoma Bravo, others, will all have their own playbook. And historically look to see where are they going and what do they want to do? And does that align with my philosophy? And does it align with where I want to go?
I've got a question on this, which I think is quite relevant, is that clearly consolidation is good for the companies that are doing that, but question mark is that good for the clients that they serve? And the reason I say that is that clearly as you grow a business, consolidation, simplifying processes, prioritizing product development where there's the biggest return on the investment. And so if it's, big international companies have got a lot of different things and priorities to focus on. And obviously they're going to go, if they're private equity backed, it's about growth and profitability and then probably another exit. For people who own a business, how do they balance mitigating some of that consolidation themselves in terms of where do they consider investing when it comes to technology, bearing in mind that this is a huge expense to get involved in something like that, and where do they sort of rely on some of the main partners that are actually sort of driving the business, and what would you recommend is best to do in terms of protecting their business future growth without necessarily getting forced into a particular route that may not be best for what they want to supply?
So, to answer that question, there's a lot to unpack there. I'll first start by saying that we're fortunate to be in an industry where I would say that the majority of the players are actually invested in the operator's best outcome, because as the operator does well, the platform also does well. So with that said, I think you've got a ton of great choice. I've been talking about different companies here. They're all good, right? So it's a matter of what's the right fit. It's almost like if you're going out to a restaurant, there's a ton of good restaurants. What is it that's the right fit for you? Or if you're making an investment, are you thinking short-term, mid-term, or long-term? The second thing is around technology investment. Technology is moving at such a pace right now that it's almost hard. Like, we have to think about retooling our teams. We think about retooling our infrastructure. There's a lot of money that's being invested into this. I would say that for most operators that want to own their own tech stack, looking at the next 5-10 years is going to be a challenge because there's compliance regulations that's coming in, there's AI that's coming in, and consumers are going to expect faster innovation. So with that said, how do you work with a partner such that that partner is going to help advance your initiative? So I think, make sure that they have open APIs, make sure that they can accept payments in all the markets that you're in. Payments is, this is your checkout. Make sure that, and we'll talk about this a bit later, but you could do add-ons. And we're going to talk about recovery as an example. How does that work? Is there a seamless upgrade path? And the second thing is, you've got to understand the regulatory framework that we live in today, right? A lot of operators would potentially push back against click to cancel as an example. And I know that we were able to defeat that bill. Even the 18 states have it today. But what's best for the consumer? Stop thinking about how the industry has been working for the last 20, 30 years, but I would take a consumer-first mentality and have that drive a lot of your decisions, and as well as your partner selections with software.
So just to ask one more question on the technology side. AI, clearly, from what I understand with my limited knowledge of technology, is that AI can now start to write code and it can almost like create apps on its own. And it seems as though as a result of what's happening in that field, it's getting rid of a lot of the development work that was originally done by people. What does that mean to me as an individual that's got a business that's thinking about the future of my business? Is this a great opportunity now for me maybe to get involved in developing my own tech stack, as you call it, that can complement what other companies are doing? Or is that actually going to be more difficult? So, in summary, does AI put more power and opportunity in the hands of me as a business owner, or does it actually get a lot more complicated and a lot more expensive than what it is today? And don't say that from a company that's selling technology. Sit on the fence on this one.
Yeah, look, I think everyone should be using AI, because here's the reality. Your staff is using AI today, right? So you don't want to be stuck like back in the phone era in 2007, 8, 9, where your members, your employees were using iPhones better before you had an app on the iPhone. So I think we learned from that lesson. I would say that I would encourage AI adoption. I would encourage AI hackathon sessions for everyone, by the way, because AI and understanding prompting is something that you don't need to be an engineer to do anymore. Right? It's made it simple. It's almost like the pre-made recipes for food. Right, anyone can be a chef now because you could order, and you learn a lot from that. From the art of cooking, like during COVID, people learned to be better cooks. So I think get involved. I would encourage you to leverage AI, whether it is from your partners or yourselves, because I think that there's a lot of good to come out of it. Before we move on to the next section, I do want to call on one of my friends, Erwin from Sport Alliance. So Cameron, if you could find, he's sitting out in the front here, but Sport Alliance is a PSG-backed company. I think they've done a tremendous job in consolidating and acquiring companies. But Erwin, you've been at Sport Alliance since they've had a few acquisitions. Would love to understand what your journey is and what Sport Alliance is looking to do.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mo. And maybe I can explain it from two ways, because in the beginning of my career, I was with Explore Technology and now with Sport Alliance. And I think there's a difference. Some of the software companies in the US follow also a strategy of M&A and keeping multiple systems alive. What we have done, we have I think 80% market dominance in Germany, but we migrated every M&A platform to one single platform. So that means that our 500 people, if they wake up in the morning, they have only one focus. So all the investment dollars, everything on resources, feature development goes in one single platform. And when I was working with Explore Technology, the strategy was different. Mo knows we were buying and buying and buying different software companies for one reason, to plug in the payment tool and make money from the payments on the software systems. So it's a little bit depending on what the strategy is of the investors. Do they want to go to the stock market? Do they want to step out in 5 years? Do they want to grow with you or take money out? So there's not a right or wrong answer. I think different companies have different strategies. And yeah, we can be happy with PSG because they allow us to put all the M&As in one single platform, and that cost also money and resources to do. But on the end, we think that's the way forward for our strategy.
Thank you, Erwin.
We'll move on to the next question, which was recovery and wellness. And the question that we put out to everybody before the event was, what type of recovery do you offer or plan to offer? And I'll give you some of the highlights from the responses that we got from everyone in the room. Sauna was number one at 67%, red light number two, 63%, percussion number three at 59%, foam rollers 52%, cold plunge 44%, and then we've got meditation at 22%, and hyperbaric at 11%. And so probably for this session, a little bit of a blank sheet of paper in terms of how we think about it. But recovery is the next new thing. I've been around in the industry to see these kind of new trends come and go, from plate load to group cycling or spinning to functional training, which I was very much involved in. And so recovery is that new thing. It's the buzzword. It's what everybody's looking at. And if you think about many of these different sort of concepts as they came in, you generally had small brands that nobody had ever heard of that came up with an idea, almost like sort of a man and a garage where they develop products, not exactly fit for purpose in some cases, and over time the products go into the market, more research and information comes out about these products, operators give their feedback, they redesign them, and you kind of get this evolution that happens over time. For most people that have been in the space for a number of years, they've probably been the test cases with many of these ideas and had to deal with it when it goes wrong and had to re-engineer it. And so I think as an industry, that's made sense, because fitness and owning gyms is still a relatively new industry in many cases. But when it comes into this recovery and wellness space, it's almost like it has the terminology biohacking attached to it. And if with the rise of things like social media and podcasts, there's a number of different claims that are made out there. Many of them lack genuine research that's probably credible enough to sort of build a business off it. They're very new, cutting-edge technologies. Some of them work, some of them don't work. And so I think for this session, it's curious to sort of get people's thoughts on this space. Clearly, it's something that people are looking for, and with sauna being the biggest one that's probably got the most research and is the most credible out of everything out there, it's quite nice to sort of see that as one of the more popular ones. But I guess over to you, Mo, probably both as a consumer and understanding where we are in the industry is, how are you looking at this space in terms of where do you think it's going, and what are some of the sort of safe bets that we can almost guarantee are going to be here in future, and what are some of the, I guess, considerations that we might need to give some thought to?
So what I think about in recovery is, number one, it's great because it feels good. It helps keep you injury free. But you know what it's missing? When you talk about strength, we talk about cardio, there's programming. Right, so in strength, you could do a progressive program. Same with cardio. You could, if you have a marathon or a 5K coming up, you could build a training program towards that. There is no programming for recovery today. Like that is missing. I mean, when we were driving up yesterday from LA, you talked about this place in Newport Beach where they had like all the things, right? They had all the things. And so now when you go into a gym, whether it be a premium product or an HLP product, they may have a sauna, they may have a cold plunge, they may have a massage chair, red light therapy. But if you're a member, what are you trying? And I think consumers are going to get a bit more educated to understand the efficacy of what they're doing. Because sure, I mean, can you just go sit in something for an hour or two? No, I mean, time is valuable. How can you be efficient with your time, just like you think about your workout? Now, recovery may be one of the things where just because it feels good and it's easy and it's an enjoyable thing to do, but ultimately, people are going to ask for this. So I think the winner here is going to be, is there an operator or a recovery brand? I'll give you another example. I mean, I've been foam rolling every day for 15 years. It's kept me largely injury-free from the running that I like to do. I also use a percussion gun as well, right? But I've had to learn, and of course I get to talk to incredible people from the industry that have said, hey Mo, for the type of training that you do, this is what works best. And that's kind of really helped me. But most members don't have that. So you're going to put a hyperized gun out on the floor. You may have a cold plunge here, but How many minutes do you go for? What kind of programming do you do, right? I think that's the next step. So being prescriptive around something that is meant for you and dealing with the ailments, which might also require an assessment. But regardless, the market is growing. So I think the reason no one has solved for that, and this may be a bit controversial, is like, how does Hyperice or Therabody or someone, like, how are you not prescribing what you're supposed to do? Be specific, right? Like if you had a 5K that you're training for, my son runs cross country, he's got a program to follow. Well, recovery should be the same way, but the reason they're not doing that is because they're growing at such a fast pace. So here's some numbers. The global recovery market is projected to reach $9 billion by 2028, growing at nearly 10% annually. That is faster than athleisure. And even red light therapy, if you break that down further, is growing at a rate of 19% a year. Cold plungers have gone viral, but now there's stuff coming back since, okay, maybe not so efficacy as we thought, maybe not as good for you, even though it has shown to reduce inflammation and soreness. So this is also not just about tools. So the other thing that I hear a lot about with teams when I talk to operators is it's about the space. And it's about what that space allows you to do. For example, social wellness clubs, Othership, Remedy Place, they're creating these new third spaces, and they're not just gyms, but they're actually replacing bars and cafes. And within a gym, we were at one yesterday, but when you think about the recovery space, it's curated. It's made to feel premium and different, as it should. So I think that's the other mind. So that's where we are today. But I think, where we see things come up is going to be around personalization.
Can I just jump in on that one? So I agree. There's definitely, if you look at where some of these studios have come from, there's a high level of customization. There's a high level of service. The Ascent one that we were talking about, they're now stacking different things together and providing a protocol based on an assessment at the beginning. One of the things I see a lot, which makes sense, is looking for the space. So an old spin room, for example, or a kids club where there's space. There's the ability, particularly for more sort of lower price point models, to be able to almost have a staffless solution where you can swipe in, you can go and lay on a bed. It's an opportunity to increase the revenue within that facility. But the key is not to have too many staff, not to have too much involvement, and be able to almost like do it as a DIY solution. Does that, is there challenges with that? Is it ideally a service-based one, or is it a case of, from the vendor side, having different solutions for different types of business models? One where it is a DIY, like a sunbed kind of concept, and another one where you really need to sort of understand what somebody's looking for and tailor that solution based on the individual.
So I think right now, and this is, I would argue, short-term thinking, you don't need to be tailoring it because it's growing so fast. So having recovery in most cases is table stakes. So here's one point to anchor on. In HVLP today, if you add a recovery room, that adds 10 to 15% higher revenue per member. And here's the other thing, it improves retention between 20 to 30%. And that's specifically in the HVLP space. So it's table stakes, you've got to offer it, consumers want it. But thinking 12 months from now, 24 months from now, right? There's a ton of great companies that are providing phenomenal products, but I think the prescription of that and how you do it to really help, and also tracking against, okay, you've been using a cold plunge now for a couple of months. Has that improved the HRV? Has it reduced your muscle soreness? Are you able to push a little bit more and make more progress? I think we're going there, but I don't know if a lot of operators are typically are thinking in that way.
Has anyone got any views, maybe in the audience? Is recovery a differentiator? So I guess, with a lot of the equipment out there, red light beds, saunas, they're things that most people can do. There's not a lot of protection around that concept.
I actually spoke to Ed from Precorp. Ed's here. I don't know if he's here or not in the audience. I can't see. Oh, Ed's in the front. Yeah, if you could, Cameron, bring the mic up to Ed. But we were talking about this over dinner last night. We'd love to get your thoughts.
No problem. So the recovery space is really interesting. I think, first of all, I always like to, I don't want to take a lot of time, obviously, but where the recovery space is, I'll go back to a quote from Henry Ford. And when they asked him why he built the automobile, he said, because if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And ultimately, that's where the recovery space is out right now. It's a little bit misunderstood. It's not just recovery, but it's also optimization. It's got to be purposeful. You can't just put a red light bed in and say, I have a recovery center. That's like opening a gym with one dumbbell, one treadmill, and a foam roller. That's a lot of clubs I'm talking to right now are saying, well, let me just put one thing in. You have to build the infrastructure out, and you have to make it very purposeful. So things like contrast therapy are ultimately, they're super important. If I'm going to have hot, I need to have cold. Well, where am I missing in there? Well, red light works really well with heat. So now I want to look at building an infrastructure around those 3 or 4 things. So ultimately, the biggest question is, how do we monetize this space? And for a lot of club owners, it's about floor space right now. Do I want to give up my cardio space? Do I want to give up my strength space to some wellness and some recovery? Well, the answer is absolutely yes, because you're going to be left behind if you don't. But this isn't Field of Dreams. This isn't, let me just put some stuff in here in a corner and hope it works. So back to Mo's point, it's got to be very purposeful. It needs to be programmed out. A lot of operators say, I don't want to man this space. All right, well, that's going to affect exactly how you build the space out, how you set it up. If it's going to be touchless wellness, it depends on you've got to look at everything. Cold plunge. Guys, we don't live in 50 states. We basically live in 50 different countries. And every state has its own municipalities when it comes to things like cold plunge. So you've got to investigate these things. You've got to wonder, you have to know that at some point in time, that cold plunge might not be the solution. So you've got to look at things like dry contrast therapies. So as I kind of ramble on with this, the reality is I think recovery is one of the biggest movers in the space right now. But how are we tracking that? And I think the winner in this space is going to be the group that puts together, 4 to 5 products that make sense. We integrate that with personal training. Instead of personal training somebody 3 to 4 days a week, one of those days is a recovery session. That's going to help that person stay healthy. It's going to help them be a customer much longer, and it introduces a new revenue stream to you from personal training to recovery. Software integration is going to be huge. We've got the Whoops, we've got the Auras, we've got the Garments, yet we're still getting fatter and we're still getting worse. So the group that's out there right now is probably a merger of some groups. I think they're going to come together and say, okay, you've done your treadmill workout today, you've done your strength workout today, your HRV is here, your recovery score is here. Now you need to go get 10 minutes of red light, followed by 15 minutes of compression, followed by 25 minutes of sauna. And by the way, when you get in here tomorrow, if your recovery score is not XYZ, here's the items you need to do. So ultimately, for anybody in here that's doubting recovery, I love quotes. It makes me sound smarter. The 7 most dangerous words in business are, because it's always been done that way. And if that's how we continue to do business as an industry, we're going to fail our customers and we're going to fail ourselves as business owners. So ultimately, I'm very passionate with recovery. These guys are right on the topic. As a club owner, if you're looking to put recovery in, don't just look at one thing. Make it very purposeful and look at about a 12-month roadmap of, I'm going to put this in first, I'm going to add this next, here's how I'm going to educate my members.
Ed, just a quick follow-up, and very briefly. So from your perspective, obviously you're representing a recovery brand, but I'd ask you to sort of be as impartial as what you can on this one. But number one is clearly in the traditional gym space, it is very competitive. There's a lot of pressure on price and margins. Can this broad term of recovery become a key differentiator for maybe an existing sort of health and fitness brand? And then number two, if there was one thing that they should do sort of leaving this room to start moving forward on that, what would be the one thing that you would encourage them to do as they start going down that path?
I say as a differentiator, the answer is absolutely yes. A lot of people, so when I had my fitness concept and my recovery concept, what was interesting was I didn't have a lot of fitness people navigating over to recovery, at least not as many as I thought. I had a lot of people coming into the recovery concept that weren't working out yet, that needed better sleep. They needed the mental aspect of it and things like that. So we have seen, I'm working with a lot of different clubs out there. We have seen a lot of clubs that are putting in dedicated recovery areas with 1 to 2 people in there, and they're using ChatGPT, guys. Believe it or not, ChatGPT is wonderful for this space to figure out how to put A plus B equals C. It's really solid. We're seeing a lot of clubs generate between $20,000 up towards of $50,000 a month. There's a club called Villa Sport that's doing extremely well because they didn't just throw a recovery area in. They made it very, very purposeful. What was the second question?
Just really leaving here today, somebody who's not doing it, they're talking to lots of people. What would be one strategic thing that they could be narrowing down their thinking on to to move this forward in a meaningful way, rather than getting sort of confused with so many different options?
Yeah, and there's a lot of different options. So what I've learned is when somebody does this, it means they have no idea what you're talking about. So sometimes when I talk, I see a lot of this, so I need to slow down. But that being said, we'll go back to the purposeful comment. If you're gonna have hot, have cold with it. I always call it the peanut butter and jelly effect, right? You can have peanut butter and you can have bread, but it's not as much good without the jelly. So go ahead and start to put this together in a way that absolutely makes sense. When you're looking at things like red light, you've got to consider there's also blue light, there's also green light, there's also clear light that goes along with it. It's cellular health, it's mental recharging. So do your homework. Don't just bring one item in. Don't just, if you're going to tiptoe into this, one of my favorite, you can't get half pregnant with recovery, guys. You've got to go ahead and jump into it and say, look, I'm going to pick 2 to 3 items. I'm going to train my sales team around this, and I'm going to educate my members, constant education of the members. Once you accomplish that, then you start to fill in the rest of the infrastructure.
Thanks, Ed. We'll move on to the next section. We've only got a few minutes left, so we'll whiz through this one. But the final question was, what type of modalities are you bullish on? I don't think it will be any surprise that strength was 78%, very dominant. Pilates 56, pickleball 41, stretching 37, and then HIIT 33. And then finally, run clubs, 30%. And I think this is interesting because obviously we've just discussed recovery. I've spoken to a number of operators. Some people think that that's for specific studios to do, and they're really just focused on health and fitness, and that's all they do. Other people are seeing this as an important part in the whole journey. I think it's interesting to see strength training because it's really how I came into the industry, and I'm sure many people sort of originally started doing some form of strength training or in weight rooms when they were younger. But the thing that went through my head as I looked at number 1, strength training, number 2, Pilates, which essentially is a different form of strength training to some respect, is where would we say we are as an industry in terms of delivering a great strength training product? For those of you who have been doing it for many years, I think how in most cases strength training is delivered is we provide a lot of equipment. Maybe we provide personal training, and I'll put personal training to the side for one moment. But for the average person, the bulk of the people that go into many of the facilities that you guys run, what's the quality of how would you rank your own strength training solution on the scale of 1 to 10 in terms of delivering a great product where people are really getting results and delivering a high quality experience? And I think there's some interesting things that we're seeing about Pilates, because Pilates is also strength training. But when you look at the successful brands that are delivering Pilates, they're really doubling down on the experience itself. So, great experience, great environment, some kind of innovative equipment for many people, and then really high quality coaching where people are probably feeling as though they're getting supported through that journey. And traditional strength training, although it's been around for so long, most people are going to places like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube to learn how to strength train. But I was just curious, there was no brand that came to mind when it was like, okay, if you think of traditional strength training with dumbbells or barbells or anything, who is the brand that really occupies that space? So I was just curious, as an industry, could we, is there space for somebody to really do a great job at strength training based on the fact that we know that it's one of the key things in terms of longevity? It's a key reason that people join the gym in the first place, to improve their aesthetics. Maybe I'll put that over to you before we sort of open that up to some people in the audience.
We did not prep for that question.
I know.
I think so on the digital front, Tonal, Ladder is doing a phenomenal job on strength training. Ladder is an incredible app. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to look at it yet, but they drive it because they create an experience digitally. They pair you up with like-minded people who are achieving the same goals in a community, and they give you a trainer. So to your point, it feels like it's personal training. It feels like it, but it's really not. It's training within a large group. I think strength training, when you look at historically and how it's evolved over time, has been somewhat of a solo discipline. It's been somewhat of something that you kind of put your headphones on and you kind of train together. It has not taken off in this group or community-based format. However, I do think that's changing. Maybe Pilates is going to help with that. But here are some interesting data points around strength training. Today, 64% of exercisers prioritize strength training over cardio. It doesn't mean they don't do cardio. It's about whether they prioritize. Funny story, Matt and I ran for the first time. This is off a bit. Ran for the first time yesterday. Right? So I go on the run, we're running, Okay, Matthew, we're 2 miles in out of 5, because he said he wants to do 5. But
5 kilometers,
but he
not
said he
5
meant
miles.
5 kilometers. So he proceeded to turn around and go back. Metrics. So the strength training equipment sales industry is projected to hit 19 billion by the end of this decade, and it's going to be larger than the global luxury watch market. So this is a massive industry. A lot of people don't realize. You talked about Pilates. Pilates is a $12 billion industry in the US right now that's growing by double digits since 2020, and it's accelerating to get even bigger than that. We talk about NFTs. Do you know that the Pilates industry is already bigger than the NFT market at its peak? It's bigger than that. So we need to be paying attention if you're not paying attention. There's another point, pickleball. We had that in the survey. Today, 13.6 million people in the US play pickleball. What if I told you that that is more than the entire skiing population in the US? Yet, think about how much we think about skiing. Mobility and stretching. Just yoga mats alone, that's $1 billion industry just in the US alone. So again, it's here. Modalities are here. But our perspective on it is different because even as an industry, we're focused on 2 primary things, strength and cardio, and that's shifting. So there is a cultural movement. I also think, though, that when it comes to running, I think there's a huge shift in running with run clubs. You and I have talked about this before. I've joined some run clubs, even Diplo's run club, which is like just taking off all over. Hundreds of people meet every week for a 3 to 5 mile run. Here's why that's important. I don't know if we can replicate this with strength, but this is how people are meeting each other. They're getting a smoothie after, they're hanging out after. In a lot of ways, it's the new dating app. Strength is like that awkward thing you go up to and you try to have a conversation with someone, right? Can you spot me? Right? Can I say hi? Can I help you with this? But running has now become this new social culture. So data backs this up today. Gen Z, and we spent a lot of time understanding where Gen Z is at. 1 in 3 Gen Zers say they'd rather meet someone through shared wellness experiences than online, right? Run clubs, pickleball courts, recovery lounges. These are all micro communities that build the belonging together. I think if we could unpack that for strength, you will see more focus and more community, in that. So hopefully that helped answer that question.
Yeah. So is there anyone that, just quickly, I know we've only got like a couple of minutes, but is there anyone we can sort of bring in on that final question on modality?
Sure. Well, I'd like to bring back a friend of the pod, Deborah Strugo, to get your perspective on it, Deborah. I know you've spent a lot of time on this.
Well, thank you, because I was like jumping out of my seat on that topic. So you're talking about strength, and if there's a strong player in strength, and you're talking about communities and niche communities. And so I think that the answer is actually some conversations I've been having around here today, which is that there have been very strong brands in niche strength communities, and that people have an affection towards those brands. So, for example, the rowing machines came up today. Why not? And Concept 2 made a great rowing machine. And so people who spent a lot of time on that, in that modality of, you could argue it's a strength concept, strength and cardio concepts, whatever, really love that Concept 2 machine. Just like Rogue made a ton of wonderful strength equipment in the kind of more CrossFit type space, right? And then I was talking to friends on the Hammer Strength side, the Life Fitness side, obviously we have Precor, but also Core Health and Fitness. Core made a wonderful hit rower. We have the ski ergs, and so I think that what has happened is kind of the communities that you come into for strength have kind of led to the affection that you have for that particular brand, and that brand has built out their product efficacy around the community's needs. So some communities in strength need really, really heavy, durable equipment, and some don't necessarily. For like power systems, when I was doing my strength workouts on the step, I was good with 5-pound weights, and I personally think of power systems for that and Rogue for something that's way more heavy and durable, for example. So I don't know if that's kind of the direction you guys were looking to go for, but I actually think that there's quite a lot of brands that are doing great things in the strength space.
I also would add to that, say that the definition of strength is being redefined. You look at the growth of High Rocks as an example, right? So you think about what CrossFit did for the strength community was incredible because it introduced Olympic lifting and power movements that otherwise most people would not have experienced. And I think that was a good thing. But it's also very inaccessible. Most people can't do cleans and snatches and deadlifts and some of these heavier movements. So you look at High Rocks and the evolution of that. I know a ton of gyms are investing in that. I think that's a good thing because it's, for the most part, very accessible movements.
And eGym, we talked about Fred again. They've. I think what they've done, which is probably what I was referring to, is they've packaged strength around some equipment with a program, and that's a unique concept to deliver. I think for most gyms, less than the manufacturer's perspective, but more from a programming. It's is there, based on the fact that it's the number one modality that people are bullish about in the future. Where can that go? How can we take it from where it is at the moment, where there's a number of there's a CrossFit equivalent for specific strength training for people of all ages.
So how do you feel about our live W3 podcast?
I can't see anyone, so there might not even be anyone out there. I've not got my glass on until I've got the light. But yes, it was great. What about yourself, Mo?
I think it was good. So tomorrow we're going to have a follow-up session, much shorter, 30 minutes. We're going to recap a lot of these topics. We're going to invite some guests from the audience to come up. I think it's going to be in the same room, so we look forward to seeing you there. But I think that this has been great.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening.